Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video I'm going to be finally talking about the new eyeshadow duos from Patrick Ta. So these have been quite controversial, especially mostly because of the price. People have been very up in arms about these for the last few weeks. They sold out during the Sephora sale, they came back in stock, they sold out again. I did buy two of them. I only have one of them at the moment. The other one is not supposed to be here for another 2 weeks according to Sephora shipping. So instead of waiting until December to film this video, I thought I would do it now, talking about the shade that I have in person that's still at the club, talk about the formula and do some comparisons. I have a bunch of comparisons from other luxury brands and indie brands and all kinds of things to see if this is worth the hype and worth the controversy and maybe worth your money. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I'm a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup. And I particularly like sparkly indie eyeshadows and high-end and luxury makeup, which this kind of falls in the middle, being a higher-end formula and supposed to be very sparkly. And I tend to be pretty analytical in the content I make. I try very hard to make thorough, thoughtful videos, and I have new videos every week, so I'd really love to have you subscribe. So I've had this eyeshadow duo. This is, again, still at the club. I've had this for a few days now. This came Thursday night, and today is Monday. So I wore it over the weekend. I've done a couple wear tests, done some different applications, brush versus finger, different primers, all of that, and I have some footage for that. So I really wanted to sit down, do an application, you can see it go on, and then do a bunch of comparisons and see if this is worth it for you. So these do retail for $42. I bought this via Sephora during the sale. So this one was in stock during the sale. And it retailed for like 30 something because I got 20% off. You can get this from Patrick Ta for 15% off if you like get a discount code. I've seen a few people do that. I wasn't 100%, I was pretty sure I was gonna like it based on everything I saw, but not 100%, so I figured to get the free shipping, easy returns, all of that, I would do Sephora. Kind of regretting that now based on how long it's taking to get the other one. I don't remember the name of it. It's Do You Know Who I Am, I think. It's the gold one where it's like more of a brown gold and more of a yellow gold. Those both look very sparkly. They look like this top formula here. So I'll have opinions on that later, but that shadow is not supposed to be here until basically December. So I figured it'd be best to just talk about this one since I already have a pretty good idea about these two formulas as is. I also wanted to get this up in case, I don't know what Patrick Ta normally does for Black Friday, but if you get, one of these for Christmas or want to ask for them for Christmas, or he does a Black Friday sale and these are part of that, I wanted to make sure that I could be one of the many resources on YouTube to look at this. So I think I will kind of talk through the different formulas in this real quick as I apply them to the eyes so you can kind of see them. I already have base makeup on that I wore to work today. And then I have a bunch of different comparisons. I have Pat McGrath, I have Victoria Beckham, I have Urban Decay, Charlotte Tilbury, Lisa Eldridge, Makeup by Mario, some indie singles. I have a bunch of comparisons, and so we'll do those at the end after we get like a baseline. So the thing about these is there are 5 duos, and they don't seem consistent in the actual formulation between them. Some of them are very sparkly. Some of them seem a little bit more like a moon dust shadow where they're sparkly, but like a little more smooth. I think the ones that have that more duochrome flip, from what I've seen, like Lauren May Beauty talk about, or just swatches from the brand. And then this one has 2, where one is a little more satin, one is a little more sparkly. The gold ones look the most sparkly, so I'm the most excited for those. But tone-wise and formula-wise, I was also very excited. Like the brown was the one that I was like, I need it immediately. So to go over the basics of it, like I said, these are $42. It's Patrick Ta's standard packaging. This is kind of his rose gold shape that he does everything in. I have one of his bronzer duos. Already it's the same packaging, this is just smaller. It's kind of a modification of the Tom Ford packaging, which I like the Tom Ford a little bit more. So the Tom Ford is weightier, but also they both have this little lip. So if you look at the Patrick Ta, it does snap, but you have to press pretty firmly there's not a magnet, it's a snap. So you have to press pretty firmly to pull that up. And then you have your little tiny mirror and you have the little L shape up here. Tom Ford's quads are the opposite. So they're magnetic, they're a little weightier, and the L shape is down here. So I find this to be easier to open. I don't have dexterity issues, but I do know people that do. And I do think that this could potentially be a little hard. You'd really have to hold it here and push here. You could not open this one-handed. Yeah, I don't love the design, but it does fit with Patrick Ta's brand. These are a baked slurry formula. I do have other slurry formulas here. I really like a slurry. It means that it starts wet. They're pretty common in luxury formulas. I'm pretty sure the Chantecaille are the same. I know the Suku formulas. So there's Suku's shadows are slurries, Syrah's are slurries. But there is a difference between like a European slurry and a Japanese slurry, which this is not. This is not as smooth and finely milled and like creamy like the Japanese ones. So one of the inherent problems with this being a duo is that there are 2 shades instead of 1. So like this was $24, this was $50 something, this was 30 something, 32 or 30. Those are for 1 shadow. So $42, you do get 2. So per shadow, you're paying less. You do get 2 grams per, but you have to want both. So like there are some of the other duos where I was like, well, that shade looks pretty, but I'm never going to use the other one. So I won't buy it because I'm not going to do that. So that does play into the price, but also if this is something that is of value to you. Before I put this on, my makeup details will all be in the description box, as well as everything that I'm comparing this to that's available, I'll have linked. This is just the makeup I wore to work today. I have a little bit of my Lace Eldridge skin tint on. I did buy the Victoria Beckham concealer, finally, since they were having a sale and I've been wanting it. And so I do have that on under my eyes and around my nose and stuff to go for some redness. Blush is KJH brand, Soft Raisin, and then Lace Eldridge highlighter, Sephora brow gel, and a little bit of my Lace Eldridge liquid shadow in Phoebe on my lid because it's basically my skin tone, and then Swede mascara, Lace Eldridge Ashes of Roses on the lips. Yeah, I think that's everything, but it'll all be listed down below. Shadows. So I do have my eyes primed with that liquid shadow. I'm gonna put the more satin one down first. You can use your finger with both of these. This one is definitely sparklier, a little more taupe. This one's like a warm brown with a gold sparkle. And I do think this one works well with a brush. So this is just kind of a fluffy flat brush. This mirror is really small, but you can use it. And I do think you can, the other shadow is the more sparkly one, and I'm assuming the more sparkly in the other duos. If you use a brush, you're gonna get more of a dispersed sparkle, but because this one is kind of satin, kind of not. It's satin, but with a lot of sparkle. It works really with a brush and makes a nice one and done shade, which I particularly like. So if you are only buying these for the sparkle and you're really not gonna ever wear more of a satin brown, you could use it as a base, which we'll see in a second, but right off the bat, spoiler, it's not gonna be worth it if you're paying $40 for just this one. There are other shadows you could get instead, but if you like me and you like a satin or a one and done like this, and you don't always need as much sparkle, I really like this. You can see you can blend the edges. This is the only brush and shadow I've used. And there is some gold sparkle there. I think in the footage I have later of the different application techniques, I use some with flash, some with not. I'm currently sitting in front of lights because it is Seattle in the fall and there's no sunlight. Even if I would have filmed this earlier in the day. But there's a soft, warm sheen, but then there's also lots of little gold sparkles. So even this one, being a satin in a low light situation, you are gonna see more sparkle than a normal satin, which I appreciate. So it's like wearable sparkle, quote unquote. I think all sparkle can be wearable, but it does make a very nice sheen on the lids. This is the kind of thing I wear a lot. So I was gonna say most days, but not most days, but a lot. I wear this kind of thing. So I have others, but having a little portable one is nice. And the others don't have the same kind of twinkle this one also has. So I do really like this, but you know, I can see why it's not gonna be the same, especially when you talked about how sparkly and how these are basically just 100% pearl. This one does have base pigment. A lot of the others do not. As you can see, there is brown all over. So I'm not really sure why this shade is an outlier, why he did this and it's not just sparkle with no base. But I actually was drawn to this partly because of this shadow instead of in spite of it. If you're drawn to this in spite of the shadow, I'm gonna go ahead on right off the bat and say, don't buy this. I do think the top shade, the sparklier one, looks better with a finger. If you use a brush, you can get some sparkle, but you might get more fallout, and you'll get like a twinkle, like a dusting of sparkle. If you use your finger, you do get more of that wet sheen because the warmth of your finger kind of melts the pearl into your lid. So instead of getting just a dusting, you're getting that wet sheen, which I really like. So you can see how much more of a wet effect you get from this when you use your finger. And then, like I said, I do have footage later where you have like brush one side, finger the other side, so you can see it side by side. But I really like this. I will wear this pretty much any day. And even this adds a decent amount of sparkle. I can kind of tap out the excess sparkle here. But it's just that beautiful like wet effect, but in a brown, which I don't have a ton of like wet looking brown shadows. Okay, so let's get into the comparisons and then we can wrap up with final thoughts, although I think you'll kind of get my opinion as we go. I wore my raccoon sweater today. I don't want to take this off, so I'm going to do swatches on the back palm of my hand or back of my hand so you can kind of see. I think back of the hand might be better because you can see them against my undertone if you are a similar olive undertone, but I'm going to do them back here. So I'm going to start with the Patrick Ta, so I'm going to do the top shade and the bottom shade. And you can see in the swatch the warm gold sheen here and the more cool like taupe sheen here, the wet sheen. If you don't like warm tones, you're not gonna like this one. And there, so you can see there's a lot of micro sparkle, really dispersed, but it is pretty uniform. It's not a sparkle where there's like some large particles, some small. They're pretty uniformly pearl, like milled pearls. So you're not gonna get the same kind of sparkle you will in some indie shadows where you have different textures. So the first thing that I thought of was, color-wise was Victoria Beckham Mink, but formula-wise were Pat McGrath, her big shadows, Urban Decay, and Chantecaille. So I'll do Pat McGrath first. So I pulled out 3 palettes. So if you have never used a Pat McGrath Mothership, in her old palettes, these 4 special shades were baked, and they are a very similar sparkly baked shadow like this. Her new ones are not baked, and I do have one of those so you can see, but these have different varying levels of texture. Some of them were like duochromes like this iridescent blue, or the shade here, but they are, I'll also do a satin, so you can see one of her satins. But they are a baked formula that gives a lot of sparkle. So you can see, especially in this one, how much sparkle there is, especially compared to the satin. So if I put the satin next to Patrick Ta's, you can see the Patrick Ta, it's a little less creamy because it's a baked shadow, but it's still a little shinier, and it does have a little micro sparkle in it. A little pearl, like gold pearl and kind of red pearl looking back at me, which this does not. This is just a sheen. But then if I do Her baked formulas, they're a little smoother, they're very sparkly and transformative, but they're not giving quite this either. I think the one that's closest is gonna be the one in Astral Solstice, which is Midnight Sun, and then I think also in Divine Rose one. And then I'll pull out, this is one of her newer ones, just this shadow up here. You can see it's very textured and sparkly. I think I just got some on my pants. But it's not baked, it's just a pressed shadow. So this is baked, this one is not. So here is Astral Solstice, the baked one. So you can see it's very sparkly. It's also a very sheer formula, like that lack of base, mostly sparkle, kind of like what Patrick advertised this for, is there. It's a little drier, it's a little less, there's a little more texture to it. And then on the side of my hand, because I'm out of room, you can see just the pressed shadow. Very sparkly, but obviously there's little bits flying up because it's just a dry pressed shadow. If I put the Pat McGrath over here again, I'll pick up a little bit more. Astral Solstice, putting it next to the sparkly here. You can see this has a little bit of a base shade, and part of what makes it look so wet is the fact that it has a different colored base to the shimmer. That's what helps that like warmer base, cooler shimmer, gives it that contrasty, that wet look. You can see just how wet it looks on the eye. And this is just gonna give more sparkle. Okay, let me wash these off and we'll get to the next round. I think for this round I'll use the palm of my hand so I can fit a little bit more. Sorry if that bothers you, I know some people really hate that. But I'll put the two Patrick Ta right here. I really do love both shadows for different reasons, but there's something really special about that one. And then I'll put Urban Decay Lithium. So Space Cowboy is gonna be a similar idea, but like a much lighter color. So Lithium is a brown. And you can see it's very smooth, very firmly pressed. I believe this is also a slurry, but it is in a pan. So a lot of the time slurries are, this is not baked. This could be a slurry that's air dried or something or pressed, but this is baked, which is why it doesn't have a pan. So here is Lithium. You can see really sparkly, pretty similar to this, but a different tone. So this has a warmer, I would say cooler base with a warmer more gold sheen. But you can see it's a very similar effect. If you only wanted it for the shade, I would probably just go for Lithium. You're gonna get a similar-ish vibe unless the tone is too wrong for you, but see just how similar those are. And then this is Rhino from Chantecaille, which is supposed to be an olive, but it's kind of a brownie taupey olive. This is another baked formula with a lot of finely milled micro sparkle. This is the thing that actually the formula reminds me of the most. When I touch it, it doesn't feel like an astral shade. It feels kind of similar, but the closest thing that it feels like is this, which these are like $54 for eyeshadow, but then you get to pick the one you want. And I'll put Rhino right there so you can kind of see, again, similar vibe, wet effect, but with lots of little pearls. So Rhino, I see multicolored pearl. I see green, I see blue, I see pink. There's lots of little sparkle in there, but then you still have that wet sheen. I do know not all the Chantecaille are as sparkly, some are more satin, so it kind of feels like he made his version of the Chantecaille shadows, and instead of $50 for one, you're paying $40 for two. So, you know, some people would rather spend $50 on the perfect one. This is 2.5 grams versus $40 for two that they're never gonna use, but you can kind of see that similarity, but and especially in the way they feel when I touch them. I think the gold are even more sparkly, so they might be a little different from this and a little bit more like the Pat McGrath from what I've seen. Next, I have Victoria Beckham Mink, which is another kind of minky brown shade. This is kind of a cream, kind of a powder. It's much thicker and dense. And you can see it looks thicker, it looks a little more like a cream, but it's giving a similar look. It's a little cooler though, especially on my undertone. This is pretty neutral to warm. This is definitely cooler. It has a warm base, but the shimmer is so cool. But this is smokier and cooler to me, but a very similar vibe. I don't think the formula is at all the same because those are much creamier. Then we've got Smoky Quartz from Charlotte Tilbury. This, again, is creamier and feels more like an eyeshadow, but it's going to be a similar tone. So you can put it right there. It's a little more brown, not as shiny, not as sparkly. It doesn't have the twinkle that the Patrick Ta does, or the Urban Decay for that matter. So if you are someone who doesn't want any real sparkle, like you just want the sheen, I would say the Charlotte Tilbury is your best bet because it is a really beautiful sheen and a one and done kind of smoky look, but it doesn't have the sparkle of these. You can see it's a little bit more similar to this shade, but it does have that like wet two-tone look to it. I also have a couple of the Pat McGrath shadows that are kind of similar, her version of the Victoria Beckham. These just feel like a nice powder, a nice creamy powder shadow again in a pot. These were like $30 again. And you get 3 grams of product in this. But you can see if I put it here, this shade is Falcon Noir, but you can see it doesn't have the sparkle of this. It's a little more sheeny, a little bit more like the Charlotte Tilbury or some of the other Victoria Beckham that I have. But you can see Urban Decay and Chantecaille are the 2 other sparkly ones. Urban Decay is probably, I don't know, this gives Lithium a run for its money. Okay, so I have some palettes here to also do some kind of formula comparison in case these are helpful for you. So just put those back on. And then this is one of the quads from YSL. This is the 100 quad. So I did want to swatch its sparkly shade up here. This is way silkier. If you want like silky soft, these YSL quads are definitely that. But they do kind of have a nice wet sparkle, but you can see it's much sheerer. It feels more sheer. It feels silky, but it feels thin and sheer. And it does have a nice wet sheen to it. Really pretty, but definitely not as sparkly or as shiny. And then here I have Lisa Eldridge Sorcery. I wanted to compare her, what formula is this? This is the Luminous formula? This is the shade Mercurial from Sorcery. And you can see it does have a nice wet sheen and kind of medium base pigment, which is why I like these. If I put it right here, you can see it's also doesn't have a lot of base pigment. If I hold it this way, you just see like a tint on the palm of my hand, and then you see that wet sheen. A lot less sparkle, a little bit more sheen, but way brighter and shinier than the YSL. The YSL is like, kind of looks just like a highlighter on the palm of my hand. So this is the new Makeup by Mario Etherealized Moonlit palette. So I did want to compare because this has been all over social media as well. The more sparkly shades in here. So there's a brown right here and kind of a taupey brown here. These definitely are thinner. They feel a little bit more like the Urban Decay, or kind of a mix between the Urban Decay and the one in the YSL, that really silky thin feeling. So if I put those here, these do have a decent amount of sparkle, but they're not as shiny and reflective as this. I think, and if you compare them to like the Pat McGrath Astral shades that I think are gonna be kind of in line with the golds, they're just not the same. These do give a really pretty wet sheen to the lid, but it's not, you can hopefully see the texture and sparkle that's in there as well. That just makes this even brighter. And then I have a couple palettes here from Natasha Denona. This is the Yucca palette. I wanted to grab the shade Plantasia, so you can kind of see hers is definitely, it's like a thicker creamy shadow, but very sparkly. I'll do it right here. And you can see this one has a different colored base, but a gold sheen instead of, it's like a warm base of the gold sheen. You can see it's pretty on par with this. It is very sparkly. One of the things people, including myself, like about this palette is these shimmers remind us of an indie shimmer. So this is similar. It's the baked version of that is kind of the vibe I get. And then I did grab my old gold palette. This is discontinued, but she did have these sparkly shades in here, so I did want to grab a couple of these that people like know and love to put next to it. So I'll do them over here so you can see it. So here is, this is, I don't remember the name shade of that one. One of them is Kava, and one of them is Sparks. So this is Kava and this is Sparks. So there is sparkle there that I can see, and they do give that wet sheen, but they're much thinner, they're much drier. They're not nearly as reflective as this. I think the Chantecaille and Lithium specifically for this shade, but Chantecaille is the closest formula to this. Chantecaille and Astral. And then I'm gonna switch over to the back of my hand because I have a couple indie singles to show you just so you can see it next to those. So I grabbed my shades from Clionadh, Shine by SD, and Terra Moons. So I've got them in these magnetic palettes. So I'm just gonna swatch a couple so you can kind of see that textural difference. So this is one of my favorite shadows that I have. It is the shade Ice Blink from Shine by SD. And so you can really see that texture. I mean, when it's a pressed shadow, but you can see the textural difference in that sparkle. And because it has different sized particles, this one is an iridescent, so there's 0 base. You do get a lot more sparkle on the eye, less wet. Still some wet sheen, but like a lot more sparkle because there's not only different colored sparkle, but there's different sized particles. And then I grabbed 2 shades from Terra Moons and 1 from Clionadh. This is the one from Clionadh, these are from Terra Moons. The shades don't matter, these are multi-chromes, they're gonna be very different, but I wanted you to see them texturally next to these. So I'm gonna do the 2 Terra Moons here, and the Clionadh. So you can see these are one shiftier multi-chromes. These cost like $18 a piece. But you can see the texture there, especially in the Clionadh. The Clionadh has a lot of dispersed sparkle. So if you were someone who has a large indie collection and you really like these shifty shades or these really sparkly, like textured shades that you're getting here, this is not the same. This is not, I don't think this is gonna draw any person in, but if you do like, I go to Sephora and swatch Lithium if they don't have the Patrick Haas. That'll give you a good idea, or go to Blue Mercury or something and swatch the Chantecaille or Nordstrom, but you can see the difference in texture there between these indie shadows and this. I like both for different occasions and different reasons, but they are distinct. And then you can just see how much more of a sheen and more subdued a lot of these more mainstream shadows are. So I think you've probably gotten my thoughts as we've gone along. I did want to talk about my wear test and stuff real quick before we finish. So I have worn these every day for the last couple of days, except for today, because I was gonna film this. I didn't have time in the morning. And I've done multiple like 13-hour wears, both with this Lisa Eldridge liquid shadow underneath and with just my NARS eyeshadow base. And I did a short wear test with no primer. And because this is that baked dry formula, even on my oily eyelids, it lasts very well. I haven't had to use glitter glue. I know Tom uses glitter glue with their Chantecaille shadows. I don't know if they have longevity issues. It's just not something they normally care about, but it is something I care about because it's less about creasing and more about the shadow just melting away. But these have lasted extremely well. So the first night, I don't have footage of this, but I wear them they came, late in the day, so I threw them on, 1 per eye, and wore them while I cooked dinner and ate dinner and hung out and stuff and washed them off before bed. I wore them for about 4 hours that night, no primer, nothing on the lid, end of day, oil already there, didn't budge. Looked pretty, looked sparkly, got me excited. The second day, last Friday, Saturday, I don't remember. I wore these all day. I wore them for 13.5 hours. I think I have a check-in around the 10 or not 10. I have a couple check-ins that I can put clips of here. And then my last check-in, I think, was 12.5 hours. And only around the 13 hour mark did I notice any creasing. That was with Phoebe underneath. I have worn Phoebe with other eyeshadows and they haven't lasted that long. Like they've lasted all day, but I definitely noticed some creasing, before then. But I only noticed a little bit of creasing right here, really easy to tap out. I just did this and it was gone and looked fresh. And that was 12 and a half hours into the wear. I walked to and from work. So I'd walked a couple miles that day. Like, I'd done stuff. Ate dinner, all of that, cooked, did dishes, and it was fine. So I even went to Target and did some stuff. So like, everything was fine and it still lasted extremely well. That made me very happy. I did wear them the next day with the NARS primer. Same thing, lasted all day. So if you are someone who has oily eyelids, I mean, I did use a primer, but I used one with every shadow. They lasted so well, like blew my expectations away for how well these looked by the end of the day. Not that the Chantecaille like melt away or the Urban Decay or anything. I think the Urban Decay don't last quite as long. I think they do crease a little bit more and fade a little bit more before this, but they are not a baked formula, and this is. I also have clips of different ways to apply them. So I've tried these with both a finger and a brush so you could see. So I have the top shade with a finger and a brush, and you can see with a finger, you get opaque, you get this kind of wet effect look. With a brush, you get more just dispersed sparkle, which I do like. And it would be a nice way to use it as a topper. So I think that's really beautiful. With the bottom shade, there's not a huge difference. If I used the brush and swept it on, I got a little less opaque than I got today. I think I just used a different brush. I also did a couple layers with this. That was pretty much just one layer. And then if you use your finger, you get opaque right away. You get a little bit more of that gold sheen. And then you can blend the edges. I think with a brush, this one worked really well. I hope he continues this formula, like starts putting these in palettes if possible, or just more duos or singles or whatever, because these are both really nice. This, for someone who likes a one and done satin shade, this one's nice. I also put it over both Pat McGrath's Intensify sticks and NYX Glitter Glue. The NYX Glitter Glue I think did a little bit more to boost the shine than the Pat McGrath, but they both looked really nice, and it definitely gave it something to cling to. Wow, been a long Monday. And then shine really brightly. So I think if you wanted the most opacity, the most shine, I would definitely use it over a tacky base like that versus a powdery base or a set base. But I think you get a really pretty effect even without the glitter glue, and I didn't need it for the wear test. Just my regular primers lasted all day. So you probably don't need a glitter glue with this, which is another perk because I just don't really like that extra step. So final thoughts on these. Are they worth it? I will say this pretty much in every video. If something is worth it is entirely subjective. For me, this is worth it. I paid $30-something for this, and it is worth that to me. This is actually worth $42 to me. I did pay full price for the other one because it came in stock the day after the sale ended. And if it lives up to the texture I'm feeling in this top brown shade or even sparklier, I think it'll be worth it for me. I like gold eyeshadow. It works well with my complexion. I do have more of a golden undertone, especially if I've been in the sun. So they're shades that I'm gonna use. But if you're only interested in one, $42 is way too much to pay for one eyeshadow, especially when you're gonna have a one there that you're never gonna use. Do I have two that I've spent $50 on? Yes, but I picked the specific one that I wanted, and I got a little bit more of it, and I don't know. I can't say you should spend your money on this if you only want one of the shadows. And that's a problem with duos. It's the same with face palettes, face duos, anything that comes in multis. Trios are the same. If you don't like all of them, it's generally not worth it. I have bought trios where I end up only liking like a blush trio where I only really like one shade in the end, and I resent the product because I don't use it as much because I only like one shadow or one product, and the other two just sit there and mock me. So there are some people like my friend as Tom who doesn't buy duos, doesn't buy face palettes generally. They only buy singles of blushes, of highlights, of eyeshadow because they get to pick the one they want. And this is something that is gonna be, you're gonna have to sit with yourself and decide if you are that person or not. I would recommend these are supposed to be coming to Sephora in person. As I film this, none of the Sephora in Washington or the Seattle area have them. So I can't go in person and swatch them, but I do believe they're coming in person, and some people have seen them in Sephora, so like, go swatch them, see if they draw you in. I did see a lot of reviews of people complaining that they weren't very pigmented for the price, and they didn't, there was no base pigment, just sparkle. That is what he advertised these as, that they are pretty much just sparkle, pearl and sparkle and more topper-like, and not a lot of base. I also don't really understand, side note, the complaint of, for the price I want more pigment, because pigment's generally not what controls the price. I mean, it can, and it does play a part of it, but like, same thing with foundation, like people saying like, if I'm gonna pay that much money, I want full coverage, but like the other ingredients and how it's formulated and all of that are generally more of the cost than just like how much of the actual pigment load is in there. So that's just a side thing that I see and annoys me. But I think I can only speak on this particular one at the moment. I am happy I bought this. I have zero regrets. I wish there was more like this, but also like Tom often says, sometimes the perfect one is the one that you have. And I think that's the case for this. I do think I would get a lot of use out of the gold, but I did buy it from Sephora on purpose because I can return it if I don't like it as much, and I will. So I hope that if you've been looking at these and you've been maybe waiting for Black Friday or waiting for the holidays or just trying to hold off, I hope this was helpful. I hope these comparisons were helpful. To summarize quickly, like I said, I think the Urban Decay are pretty similar. The closest, I would say, some of the Pat McGrath shades and the Chantecaille, some of the Chantecaille shades are going to be the closest in formula. And you know, this is an $130 palette, and this was $50-something by itself. So having something similar in two shades I really like, and I do like both, I think this is 100% worth it. I just think, yeah, I think for most people, it probably won't be. And I agree with Tom that maybe having $30 singles would have been better and people would have been pissed off less, but you know, I understand his vision and why he wanted to pair them the way he did. So it's not my brand, it's not our brand. So again, I hope this was helpful. I hope these comparisons, shade and formula wise, were helpful. Let me know in the comments what you think. Were they helpful? Have you already picked these up? What are your thoughts on them? Are you going to pick them up? I'd love to talk to you all in the comments like always. If you did make it this far, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. It helps the channel quite a bit, and I will see you all in my next video in a couple days.